everyone, it's Miss Sam from the Levittown Public Library, and I'm so happy that you could join us for Computer Science Education Week. Everyone should have already picked up their activity packet from the library. Inside the folder, you'll see that there's two things. There's an activity booklet, which has all of our activities in it that we're going to be doing, as well as all the instructions and everything that we're going to need. Then you'll also have a cipher wheel. This we're going to use for the third activity. In addition to your activity kit, you're also going to need something to write with, preferably a pencil with an eraser in case you want to change your answers. And you're also going to need some small counters. For that, you can use anything you have lying around the house. So if you have some dried beans or popcorn kernels, M&Ms, or if you don't have anything like that, you can always take a piece of paper and rip it up into some small little pieces, and you can use those to count as well. Okay, so now that we have our materials, let's get started on our activities. Okay, let's get started on activity 2, encode an emoji. First, let's look at some of our computer science topics that we're going to need for this activity. The first one is encoding. Encoding is a way of representing information in a way that can be stored, transmitted, and reproduced by a computer. Compression is a technique to reduce the amount of space that data takes up in a computer. There's lots and lots of information, but each computer only has a limited number of space. And pixels, tiny individual squares that together make up the computer screens.
Let's open your booklet and find this pixelated image of a house. Let's think about it. How could you describe that picture over the phone so someone could recreate it? Would you tell them what colors it is? Would you tell them where the positions of those colors are be? How would you describe this picture to someone who can't see it? A computer can't see images. It needs to know the color and position of each pixel to show a picture. One way to describe an image to a computer is to list the color of each pixel in order, kind of like this. Let's look at that first row. I could say white, white, black, white, white. Then the computer would know what that first row of pixels should look like. I could do the same thing with the next row. White, black, 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 white. And then the next row. Black, 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 black. And so on and so forth until I've created the entire image. However, that's a lot of words just to describe a tiny picture. We have to remember a computer screen has millions of pixels. That's a lot of data to store just to make an image on a computer.
What's a way that we can compress the information to make it easier for the computer to store? Well, to make it easier, it helps to notice the patterns in the pixel. For example, we could group the pixels that are the same colors together. So for the first row, I could say that there's 2 white, 1 black, 2 white. To make it even shorter, I can just say the numbers 2, 1, 2. This is a way of encoding. For this particular image, we're encoding a black and white image by just listing the numbers. So each number represents a group of pixels. Listing the numbers takes up much less space and time than listing every single pixel color. Using groups saves space when large areas of an image are the same color. To turn that encoding into an image, we read each row. Starting with white, we're going to fill in the pixels. Every time we see a new number, we're going to switch colors. So if we look at our pixelated image of our house, we can see that we have 2 white, 1 black, 2 white. Starting with the white, again, we have 1 white, 3 blacks, 1 white. Again, every row we're going to start with white. So we have 0 whites. So we're not going to color this first one in white at all. But now we have 5 black squares. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if we do that row by row, eventually we will build this picture of a house. So let's do these first 2 together to see what images it creates. So the first couple rows have been done for us. we're always going to start with white. So that's going to be the first color. So the first number will tell us how many of those colored squares we need. So we need 2 white ones. The next one is 1, so 1 black one. Then 2 white squares. Then 1 black square, and 2 white squares. Okay, that's the first row. Now we're going to do the second row. 1 white square, 2 black squares, 2 white squares, 2 black squares, and 1 white square. Our picture is starting to take shape. Now remember, we always start with the white squares first. So right now we have 0. So that means we're not going to have any white squares at the beginning. Then we have 1 black square we're going to start. Then we have 6 white squares. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then lastly, 1 black one. Now for our next row, we have 8. So remember, we're starting with our white squares. So we have 8 white squares. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we're not going to color any of those in. We're going to leave that row alone. Then our next one, we're going to have 1 white square. Then we're going to have 2 black squares. So we're going to color those in. And then 5 white ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now we're going to move on to our next row. We're going to have 3 white ones. 1, 2, 3. 2 black ones. And 3 white ones. 1, 2, 3. Oh, our picture is starting to take a little bit more shape. Now moving on to the next one. Again, remember, we're always starting with the color white first. So white, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then we have 2 black squares. Then 1 white square. And our very last row is going to just be 8 white squares. So here's our first image. Let's do one more together. So they've already done the first 2 rows for us. Again, we start with 2 white squares. Then we have 1, 2, 3, 4 black squares. Then 2 white squares. Our next row, we have 1 white square, 1 black square, 4 white squares, 1 black square, and 1 white square. Now let's do our next row. We have 0 white squares, then we have 1 black square, then 1 white square, then 1 black square, then 2 white squares, then 1 black square, then 1 white square, and finally 1 black square at the end here. Okay, let's do another row. This one looks like it's pretty much the exact same thing as the row above it. So again, we're going to have 0 white squares at the beginning. Then we're going to have 1 black square, 1 white square, 1 black square, 2 white squares, 1 black square, 1 white square, and lastly, another black square. Okay, looks like it's starting to take shape of our picture. Again, we have 0 white squares at the beginning. Then we're going to have 1 black square. Then 6 white squares. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then 1 black square at the end. The next row, we're going to have 0 white squares at the beginning. Then we're going to have 1 black square, 1 white square, 4 black squares, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 white square, and finally 1 black square. Can anybody see what picture we're making? All right, we got 2 rows left. We have 1 white square at the beginning because we start with the number 1. Then we're going to have 1 black square, 1, 2, 3, 4 white squares, 1 black square, and 1 white square. Now we're on our very last row. We have 2 white squares, then we have 4 black ones, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 2 white ones at the end. And look, we've created an emoji face. Great job doing the first 2. Now let's see if you could do these on your own. You're going to follow the encoding to see what images it makes. For these images, we're going to start with the white boxes first. So the first number is going to list the white, then you're going to go to the black, then white and black, and back and forth until you've reached the end of the row. See if you can find out what images are encoded in each of these squares. If you'd like to check your answers, you can always click on our answer key to see what images have been created. Once you've finished with those, you can always try making your own images using encoding. Simply fill in the pixels on the grid to create your image. To encode it, you're going to start at the top left corner, and you're going to write down the number of white and black pixels in order. You're going to repeat this until you get to the end of your row. Then you're going to repeat that process for each row. You can send your encoding to a friend or family member and see if they can draw their picture just by using your encodings. Some things to think about while you're working on these encodings. These encodings only work for black and white images. We're only using 2 separate colors. How might you encode a color image? You can feel free to share your encodings with family and friends. Can they recreate your image? We would love to see what images and encoding you created. You can share with us by emailing them to childrens@levitttownpl.org. I hope you enjoyed this activity and look forward to seeing you in activity number 3.